Hey there, Russ here. Welcome back to the shop. I want to do a quick update on what we talked about in the last video, and that is these lights right here. I've bought 4 of them now over the last couple of years, and as I told you, I put one right up there about a year, almost a year and a half ago, I'd say, probably. Now then, take a look at it. Yes, the day after I did that video, that one went out. So it lasted maybe a year and a half at the most. So I'm not getting a very good idea about what these things are going to do, because it should have lasted longer than that. Even though that one has no holes in it, but that one has never given me a moment's problem since I put it in there. And these lights in here come on in the morning. They're on 8-9 hours a day every day. So 18 months at 9 hours a day. But for the money that you spend for these, I don't know if it's worth that for these. I'm more inclined at this point to stay away from these with the diffuser that are all encased in plastic. I don't think they're dissipating the heat quite well. Now, I may change my mind because I have one more that is in the kitchen right now. I did drill these holes and put it in there before I ever turned it on for the first time. So it has the best chance of surviving an overheating problem, maybe, but we'll see. So, but only time will tell on that one. So anyway, but in the meantime, this is not what I'm going to buy for a while, at least. They're great. I really like the looks of these. It's a shame because in the house, this is a great replacement to put up on a ceiling somewhere to give you good light in the whole room. And it's nice. It's nice with the diffusers. Most of the ones that they're out there for the garage, all of them really are made with an aluminum grate, so there's lots of air movement around them, and they don't put diffusers on them. You almost never see. The only one I've seen with diffusers really is this right here, and it's the same thing but under different names. It's identical, so I'm sure it's made by one manufacturer and it's sold under a couple, 3 different names. But we'll see how that goes, and I'm going to be hard pressed to go back to where I decide I want to use these. So in the future, any of these I need, I'm just going to go with the open ones without the diffuser and with the aluminum frames. I think those are going to hold up much better for the heat problem that they have. We shall see. But as far as that heat goes, it might help it, because here's the problem with that. This is the one that fell apart from the heat. And it was, again, before I figured out about drilling them. This is the one that told me that. This is the inverter that's inside to take it from 110 down to, I think it goes to 80 volts. So this thing is pumping, and these are all hooked up in series, and they really run on about 14 or 15 volts each. So that's why it takes a lot of power to run all of these lights, and the heat, I think, just can't get away from it because of the way it's designed. So heat is a problem with LEDs, from what I understand, and I think it's really showing up on this style here. So no diffusers, but I think that this might really help, because if you look at the way this thing is designed, all of these wings set in here, and the only way the air can get out of these wings is either through the panel, which has no holes in it, or at the bottom where the 2 pieces come together to sandwich the LED light. Right at that end is where it's open, so all that heat is actually coming out right at this hinge, and so a lot of it would go right up into there. So I think a lot of the heat out of these things was also going into this thing. Why they didn't just go ahead and put a couple holes on the top of this, I'll never know. That seems like that would have been a good idea. So, but you shouldn't have to modify it to make it last. That's the thing. So I'm just going to avoid these. If you've had any experience with any of these, I would love to hear what your stories are about it. But that's where I'm at. But I can see where if you drilled holes in this, when you look at all that heat that can get in here, because this thing's hollow all the way up to this tip. So all of this retains the heat, and the heat can seep out from between in here, but that's not much escape route for the heat to come out of here, and the heat up in this area never comes out. So that really just builds up more and more heat constantly. Anyway, that's my thought about this. I think it's time to do away with it. I got to figure out what I'm going to do with all of these things, because there's a lot of lights here, and I might find a use for them somewhere, somehow, and just take a simple inverter and run one or two of these. I think that probably if they had taken this light and instead of running it at 80 volts to run all 5 LED packs, if they had taken and reduced it down to maybe 50 volts or 55 or 60 volts, drop the volts down a little bit, then it wouldn't give you the 6,000 lumens, but it would last a lot longer. But there's no adjustment on this little fella here. And I kind of looked out there at a couple of different places to see if I could find some kind of replacement here. I can't find anything to replace this, and trying to fit something else up in there to revamp this to be different would be very difficult to do unless you can find these things, and they're just not out there. And quite honestly, I'm not smart enough to make one of these things when it comes to electronics. I could never even begin to do that. But you can see this thing has really got a dark color to it, where it's been warm, quite warm. And you can see where all of this glue, where it was glued right here haphazardly, that's the way it was glued in there. So that thing did nothing but build up heat, it looks to me like, just sitting there. And it was just doomed to fail, it seems like to me. So anyway, so much for this light. The jury's out, but I would tell you right now, if it were me, don't buy the ones with the diffuser on them at this point, unless you want to go through several of them and maybe experiment like I did to get one to finally work. But at this point, I don't like them at all. I think they really are, they're just too much heat. They can't take it. So I had one that failed on me because the screws, it got so hot, the screws came out of the case and it just fell apart. That was the first one that I brought out that one time that I showed you. And in fact, that was this one. Then this one then failed 3 months after I replaced this one in the kitchen. This one failed. And so for the last couple of months, I've had a new one in there with the holes already drilled. In the meantime, my last one that I thought was really maybe going to stick it out and be a good light, it didn't last all that long either. It only lasted, like I said, maybe 18 months at the most. So I don't know if I can figure out exactly when I did put that in there, but it doesn't matter. I know it's less than 2 years, I guarantee you. So I'm really disappointed in these. So watch out. Any thoughts about any of this? You know, I'd love to hear what you think, but I think that's what's going on with this thing. They're just being destroyed by the amount of heat that builds up inside of this little tower that just can't go anywhere. And that's what makes these things to be doomed at an early age. So anyway, I did want to tell you one quick story too about Missy. She I give these soup bones to the dogs as treats all the time. They have marrow in them, and it's the leg of the calf of the cow, and it's cut into pieces, and they come in different lengths and different diameters based on the size of the cow's bones. But this one in particular, turned out that this thing had the perfect size to create an issue. It was scary when it happened at first, but what happened was this thing is exactly the right size to fit. If this is Missy's jaw, the lower jaw, when she was in there scraping this thing, getting that marrow out of there, and she stuck it in so far that it popped through, her canines were sticking up. Without the canines, this thing would slide perfectly like a glove on her lower jaw. It was a perfect fit. It wasn't strained, wasn't tight, but you couldn't turn it. It was like a glove on there. But with the canines, you couldn't pull it off. And somehow it had popped past the canines and got on there. Needless to say, when it happened, she was here in the shop. And all of a sudden, I heard her over there in panic mode, running around and jumping and bouncing off of things. And I knew something was wrong. I called her over, and I see her sitting there with this thing on her jaw. And she's pushing down on it with her two front paws, trying to push it off her jaw. And she can't get it off. So I calmed her down, because she really was tense at that point. And I would have had to calm her before I could even take a close look at it. And I tried to take it off. That's when I realized that there's no way I can get them over those canines. How am I going to get that off of there? So I called the vets in the hospital. This was on either a Saturday or a Sunday. And so they weren't open. So the only place I could go was like 50 miles away to an emergency room for animals. And I could just see, it was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon when this happened. And so I could just see me being there till 8 o'clock at night, having to put her under, knock her out so that they could cut it off. And so I called a friend of mine up and asked him if he'd come over and help me, because trying to hold her down and do all this, there was just no way. So I needed another pair of hands. And quite honestly, you know who she cannot begin to hold that dog in control, Missy, if she doesn't want you to hold her down. And she's really very strong now. So anyway, a friend of mine from around the corner came over, and we worked on this for about an hour, tried different things. And finally what we found out is that when it was on there with the 2 canines on top now, mind you, the lower lip, we pushed it, tucked it back in there, and we were able to finally lift that up enough that it actually came up this way, and then was able to take it off her jaw. Came right off when we started pushing all that lower chin meat down through the bottom of the hole, and then it just pulled right off. So that's apparently how it got on there. She had it like this, and it went like that and popped right on because it pushed the lip out of the way, and once it got on, all that lip went past and now wouldn't allow it to come back off. So by pulling that lip meat back out of the way, tucking it in, we were able to get it up and off. Very bizarre. And like I said, at the first, she was so panicky. After I first tried to get it off her and I realized I couldn't, that's when I let her go. I took her in the house and I sat in a chair with her and comforted her for about a half hour, because then she started to calm down. Then she'd get up, and I saw her sitting by the back door, just sitting there. And every now and then I'd hear this click, click, click. And I looked over and she had it on there. And every now and then she was taking her jaw and going, and she was listening to the sound, I imagine. And it was sounding weird to her. But she was just sitting there kind of playing with it while it was stuck on her jaw. And she very patiently waited. And then when my friend came over and we got her out here and got her down, I had to hold her while he tried to nurse it off when we finally got it off. But she really tried to be patient with us to get it off of there with her. But she went into panic mode a couple of times when we were trying to get it off. So, but it came off. And, what's funny is that the first reaction from you-know-who was, oh, I'm going to have to stop buying those bones from now on, or you're going to have to start cutting them in half or something. I've never had a dog have this kind of problem. This was so weird. And like I said, this size is the perfect size to fit on there just right. It's like it was made for it, the way it slipped on there and off. But I've been thinking about it, and I thought finally, this is good for them. They love to eat that marrow. They'll chew on one of these things for a good month after I give it to them. And it's good for their teeth to work with this, and the marrow is good for their health. So I didn't really want to stop giving them to them. So I decided finally, after looking at it, that what are the odds of this thing being the perfect size to slip on there and be stuck on there like that? Very, very minimum. But I'd never looked at these things in that way before. So if I ever get one that's like this and it's pretty close to this size, I might hesitate about giving it to them without cutting it in half. But most of the time, I'm still going to give it to them. I've been giving these bones to my dogs for 40 years, probably. And I've never had a problem with them, with these things before. So it was really freaky that happened. And boy, it did freak out that poor little dog. She was so panicky when I first got to her. Now when I look back, I smile about it. At the time, it was pretty stressful though. But we all came through. I don't think there's any permanent mental scars on this or anything. She still chews on these things all the time. Not this one. This one I won't give her because we don't want this one to go back on. So I'll probably throw this one away. But if I get any more that I have any doubt about, I'll just put them on the bandsaw and cut them in half, or cut a slice off of it or something, so that they can still get to all the marrow on it, but yet not get it caught on their mouth. So lesson learned, as you do when you have animals. They teach you new things all the time. Nothing to say. She's a great dog. Since we got her, she's starting to listen. She's listening to commands. She doesn't pull on the leash near like she used to. But I will tell you, I have to use a choker chain type of leash on her if I want to keep her on a leash and control her. She is not ready for a leash just to snap onto her collar, which is always loose. Because she pulls on that thing and doesn't let up. But she's learning to be able to be leashed at this point. She learned, she now sits, she listens to me better, she gets excited, she doesn't jump up on us very often, and when she does, I say, don't do that, and she stops. And usually when I tell her a command, I only have to speak it to her. You know, like she comes over and wants petted and she's being a real pest, I'll give her attention for about 5 or 10 minutes, and then I'll tell her, okay, that's enough, no more. And she'll look. Sometimes she'll push, want me to pet her more, and I'll tell her, no, no more. And eventually she just kind of looks, and then she gets down and goes off and plays somewhere else. She got a little bit of affection, which she really thrives on that. So she comes around several times a day for that 5-minute petting. So she's falling into a routine. She spends a certain amount of time playing with Annie, but poor Annie these days, she's getting pretty old. She doesn't really like to play much anymore. When she first came and she got used to her, they used to play all the time. They still do once in a while, but she's had some bad days the last week. She hasn't been moving around much, so unfortunately she is really up there. She's over 12 years old, Annie, and what a wonderful dog. She hears everything you say. She understands everything, and she knows what she's supposed to do before you tell her half the time. So she's really become a very smart dog. If you've ever seen that show with John Wayne, and the movie was Big Jake, or Jake, and he had a dog for a sidekick. And whenever he wanted that dog to attack somebody, he'd just say, dog, and the dog would attack. Or if you say, dog, go with him, and the dog would follow him and leave, and go with him instead of you. And it just sounded funny that how he would just give these quick little commands to this dog, and he would do it. That is where Annie is. She almost knows before I do what she needs to do. And she's willing to do it. So she loves to please us. And that's what makes her such a great dog now. So it's a shame that she's in the twilight of her years. And she probably won't be around maybe in a couple of years from now. She won't be around anymore, I suspect, if not sooner. So time will tell. But labs like that, she's an 85-pound dog. They don't usually live much past 12 years old. That's a general rule. Sometimes they do. I had one that went to 14 years old. It was a male. So she might still be around for a little while, but her hips aren't doing real well. Anyway, I am rambling. I love that dog. She has been really a great addition to our family and to help protect. And she's also learning how to listen for what to listen for when something isn't right around the house. So she's going to be a good watchdog before this is done, to watch and let me know when something isn't right. And I can see that in her. So once she learns to listen to me and to anybody that talks to her, once she learns that and wants to do what we want her to do, which she's getting there very much, and getting that puppy out of her, that's the hard part. So, and I think she's coming along very well, considering that she's 8 months old now. What is this? This month is 9 or 10. So she's 9 months. So she's actually 9 months old now. She'll be 9 months this month sometime. So coming along. Boy, I'll tell you what. I got Annie when she was 6 months old, and I will tell you, that was all the difference in the world. She already had a lot of basic knowledge about how to behave in that. Even though she had a lot of puppy in her too, and still does at times. She really had already done a lot of things that I've had to try to get this one to learn to do. Like housebreaking. What a pain that was, trying to teach her not to do some things in the house. She is now completely house trained. She hasn't had that accident for a very long time. But it may reoccur. When she does not like cold. Last winter, when I was trying to housebreak her, what a horrible time to housebreak a dog, because she did not like going outside in that snow. Especially when it was up to her butt when she walked around, when it got deep. But she survived it. She didn't want to go out there to go to the bathroom because it was cold. And that really made it a little more difficult to give her the incentive to go outside and not in the house. But it's coming along. Things are great. And she's going to be a wonderful dog. But I thought I'd share this with you real quick about what happened here. Very bizarre. And it's amazing how sometimes some of the weirdest things can happen when it comes to your dogs. So, anyway, I want to thank you for coming by. If you learned something here or you like this video, hit that like button. Lets me know that I'm doing something right. Most importantly, though, please come back again. And if you have any thoughts about anything or about something new, just leave in the comments. I really appreciate hearing from all of you. So, thanks, and we'll see you guys again very soon.